Welcome back. So today we're going to make a tote bag, and these are the tools you're going to need. I'm going to list them out. So firstly, because there's thicker fabric, namely more of a heavier weight, we're going to use the denim slash heavy duty needles. So of course the universal can be used, but just in case we don't want to damage the machine or damage the needle that's currently in there, we're going to switch to one of these. And then we have, of course, our fabric scissors. I have my rotary cutter that I actually use for fabric. These scissors are more for like cutting the webbing that we're going to use. And speaking of that, I'm not sure if you've ever seen a webbing, but this is kind of like a strap. Sometimes they're used to make belts. Other times they're used for handles, like we're going to do today as the tote bags. All right, so of course we have our board here where we're making measurements. At least it's the easiest thing that I use for making measurements. All right, so next, of course, we have our markers or pens, washable, of course, so that we can make markings on the fabric. Chalk doesn't necessarily work for me as well as I feel like the pens do, and because they wash out, I prefer these. Also going to use duck canvas fabric. So this is kind of like a base color I chose. It's kind of like a khaki. It is a whole lot thicker than your cotton canvas that's in apparel. So if you're going to places like Joanns, which is where I got this from, and of course, they're always having sales, then you're going to go to the outdoor fabric area, which is where the heavier cotton canvas is found. And like I said, this is duck canvas. Now, it's already been cut into pieces. So this is 7.5 or 7.5 by 15. And that's of course inches. And then we have the 17 by 19, and that's two pieces of that. So I have two pieces of the 17 by 19, and then one piece of the 7.5 by 15. All right. All right, so we'll of course need a sewing machine. So I have my Serger trusty handy dandy heavy duty, and sidekick to this will also be the Serger heavy duty Serger. Now this is optional, so of course you can just use the sewing machine for everything. All right, so I forgot to mention, or almost forgot to mention, the iron. There will be a little bit of pressing for this project, so of course kind of pressing those tiny seams, those areas before sewing is very helpful for a tiny iron like this. Of course your household iron will also work. Okay, so I can't forget the pins, and of course the pin cushion goes along with everything. So I just usually keep about 10 or 15 here in the pin cushion just because it comes very handy when it comes to sewing. And this has a nice little wristband on it. So I won't necessarily keep that on me, but it's very convenient. So we'll need some pins. All right, so the first part of the project as far as actually sewing is going to be the pocket area. So firstly, we are going to seal the top of the pocket. So let's say this is the bag here. This is your 19. So actually, let's get the fabric, make it a little bit easier. So this is our 17 by 19. Again, if you're looking at the bag, like the handles go over here on this side, then your 19 by 17, meaning that the bottom of the bag will be a little bit shorter than the elongated side, so you can put more items in there, of course. So our pocket is going to go towards the bottom of that bag, of course, and folding it in half will kind of give you the middle so that you can see where exactly to line that pocket up. As you can see, that line is still indented where I did so earlier, and the pocket's going to go, of course, closest to the bottom, because remember, this is where the handles go. You'll put your items, of course, in this pocket here. So before we actually sew the pocket to one side of the bag, you need to kind of neaten this with a nice straight seam. So moving this fabric back out of the way and kind of flipping that over, we're going to give it a a 1/2 inch seam and then another 1/2 inch seam. Okay, so now we're going to press that with fingers, of course, and surely if you don't want to use the iron, you can. But again, it just makes sewing a whole lot more difficult when the fabric behaves, and because it's a heavier duty fabric, you know, of course, as you can see, it's unraveling already. The iron will come in handy, making sure to tame the fabric while it's being sewn. All right, let's go over to our Serger Duo, and I will be using both the serger and the sewing machine, but for this particular project, more so the sewing machine. All right, so now our pocket, the top seam is beautifully stitched, back stitched on both ends just to kind of seal everything together. So now we can get our larger piece of fabric because it's time to pin that pocket to the side of the bag it's going to go on. Now remember, this is laying the bag horizontal to me, but now that 19 side is here, 17 is there, pocket goes there. You can kind of put everything in the pocket here, and that seam is going to be beautiful once everything's stitched together. So pinning that pocket to the bag so that we can go ahead and close that stitch. All right, so the bag is pretty much pinned the way I want it to be. Now, pro tip, start with the bottom of the bag so that you can make sure that this part is definitely lined up. And then, so start pinning from the bottom to the top. That way it makes it kind of easier to make sure that the bag or the pocket is situated where you want it. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and get the side and this side stitched. Not worrying about the bottom at this moment, just stitching both sides of the pocket to the bag. All right, and so and then just be sure, let me just slide this over here a little bit so you can kind of see where the handle is. Of course, you want to make sure that you have the handle to kind of hold, and the bag is going to look how you want it to, the end result. And then another tip, so when I sewed the sides down, it didn't necessarily come out as straight as I wanted to. Again, second sewing project. So what I'm going to use to put the strip, because again, the webbing is going to cover, you know, the inconsistency. Then I'm going to use the actual board, you know, the measuring board to kind of line up the straps so that I know for a fact they're straight before I pin them and before, you know, everything goes on there more permanently. So you can have the numbers here and then the, you know, number on the other side, or at least the line, you know, looking at the line here and kind of lining it up. So that's what I'm doing with the strap, making sure that that line is straight, pinning, and then knowing that, you know, that pinned area is going to be for sure straight this time. All right, so now that we have the straps pinned down, we are going to sew this bag starting from here. This is where I'm going to start anyway. So right here at the very edge where the bottom of the bag is, we're going to go very close to the edge of the bag here, turn this direction, sewing here, and then back down, and then we'll go over to the inside of this portion or part of the bag or the strap, and then we'll go along the very edge of this, turning there, and then all the way down here. And this is definitely where that denim or heavy duty needle comes in. The fact that you now have, you know, the webbing on top of this already thick duck canvas. So, and then we're going to add an additional layer when we put the other side of the duck canvas bag on the other side of the bag on top, and then we're sewing 3 layers. So if, you know, you're, like I said, you're doing fine with just the regular universal needle, that's fine. But I am definitely seeing that I needed the denim or the heavy duty needle. All right, so we are done stitching, as you can see, the other handles, or the other handle to that side of the fabric. Now we need to work on getting this side completed. Now we are going to be making a few markings just because we kind of need to figure out, one, you know, lining everything up so that both straps look, you know, as symmetrical as possible on both sides of the bag. 2, because we have a pocket on this side of the bag, we need to know exactly where we're going to stop sewing or where we're going to pivot, you know, and kind of go back down the other side of the bag. So using my little gigantic ruler, you know, I'm going to kind of make some markings for those straps and that stop mark. Okay, so I didn't actually feel like I needed to make lines. The ruler pretty much kind of helped me to kind of line everything up per se, but just making sure I pinned it so that it was pretty straight when I did so. But I am going to measure and mark, of course, the stopping point. So let's fold that over for a little bit and get my accurate measurement for how much inch. Okay, so we ended up at about 14 exactly, and it's pretty good because I kind of eyeballed the half an inch and half an inch when I folded it over, pressed it, and then neatened up the pocket. So it's pretty good that we're exactly 14 when it's time to make this measurement. So okay, so 14. So that's, we're going on to our other side to accurately be sure we are giving the proper measurements. So from the bottom, we have 14. All right, so we are at the point where the straps are sewn onto both sides of what will be the bag. So we're going to put the straps sides together, facing each other, so that the perimeter of the bag can be sewn together, and then you'll kind of turn everything inside out and get that clean edge at the bottom. So I'm actually going to use the serger. This is probably the only portion of the project where the serger is going to come in at, but I'm not really going to want to sew along the edge. Of course, if you prefer sewing with this zigzag stitch or straight or other, it's perfectly up to you. But again, I prefer the serger mainly because of the fraying of the fabric and just the thickness too, as well as me wanting to kind of have that clean finish. So I'm going to go ahead and serge with the both sides facing outward, so you won't see the serge, you'll see the other threads from the outside, and I'll be back once that's done. All right, so as you can see, the bag is serged, and the outside of the bag, because of course we're inside, or outside is in right now, you can see that it's serged, and I feel like, the reason why I use the serger is because that level of strength for this heavy duty fabric, and then kind of removing, like I said, that fraying, you won't be able to see it at all from the outside. So now we're going to create this corner method, basically giving the bag its shape, and so that when you kind of sit it down somewhere, it kind of bellows out a little bit at the bottom of the bag. So at the bottom, you kind of grab your two corners, flatten them out, in a diagonal way, and then create like a little tail or a triangle, and then stitching across here so that that triangle kind of maintains that shape of the bag. So I'm going to stitch this with the sewing machine, no serging, no more serging, and kind of give that bag a wonderful shape. All right, so now that the corners are sewn, you can kind of see what I meant by the bag kind of has its shape. So, the bottom of the bag has some volume to it, so that when it's kind of sitting up, you won't necessarily have to, it can be empty and it can just sit on its own because of those corners kind of creating a bellowing out for the bag. So, well, next to the last step, I would say, is our top of the bag. So from those frayed edges, now, of course, can't necessarily serge this. So we're gonna go back to the sewing machine and kind of create that fold over method that we did for the pocket. Remember that finishing? So that we can kind of get this neatly closed off and reveal our top of the bag, and then we'll have one last step after this. All right, so as you can see, that bag is beautifully stitched on the outside, and then of course, mirroring that on the inside. So then we have our completed product. I put some candles inside of the bag to kind of help it stand up, but again, retained its shape, beautiful. You can choose to kind of pinch the end of the strap here, and then pin it down, and then strap or sew or stitch from there to kind of create that permanence of the handle, but I prefer kind of the thicker just because I kind of use it for more heavy duty things. And this will definitely be a good work bag for me. So, second sewing project after the top that was kind of the alteration, I would say. So looking forward to the many more, and tune in next week to see what's new. Thanks for watching.